like to call to order the Tuesday, September 20th, 2022 meeting of the Frankfort Plant Board at the Frankfort Plant Board offices. First off, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Here.
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 We have a quorum. Next item is the minutes. Consider approving the minutes of August 16th, 2022. Everybody should have them there in their material. Everybody's had a chance to look at them. Do we have any changes or corrections? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes adopted. I would like to announce to the audience and to anybody watching, this is going to be a little different meeting today. We're going to have two different closed sessions. We've got some scheduling issues on the first presentation, or the first matter in closed session. So we're going to go into a closed session. We'll be in there for a little while. Then we'll come back, do the rest of the agenda, and then we'll have a second closed session at the end of the meeting on different topics. So with that, Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request permission to call a closed session pursuant to KRS 61810-1C to discuss pending or proposed litigation regarding an employment matter and a contract matter.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We're going into closed session. For everybody here, we're going to go upstairs, so we don't have to clear the room. I'd like to have a motion to come out of closed session. Do we have a second? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We're back in open session. Do we have a motion coming out of closed session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to direct staff and council to proceed as directed in closed session in the employment matter.
Do we need a motion on that, Hans?
Already made it.
Yes, and we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's adopted. Next item, we're moving right along here. We're already down to item 3 at 7:30. Next one, Gary, you and Doug. This is on the KYMEA power cost adjustment.
Correct. We have Doc, and we also have KYMEA Council coming to a presentation for you about it. Thank you.
Fit up here.
Doug, you want to introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, I'm Doug Bursch, the President and CEO of Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency. And am I ready for sharing? Whoops, hold on here. Okay. There it goes. Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, how would you like me to proceed?
If you would just, I know we've had a chance, we've got the PowerPoint in our board package, so if you just want to give us a high level, because I think what we need to understand tonight, and as I understand it, KYME is going to be meeting on Thursday and discussing this.
Yes.
And I think what we need to understand as a board, and anybody feel free to chime in, is we've got contracts with, KYME has contract with various energy sources, and that there's a lot of pressure in the market, not just in Kentucky, but nationwide, that have put a lot of pressure on prices, and kind of what KYMEA is facing and what the alternatives are to address it, which basically affects the 10 cities that are buying power from KYMEA.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I'll try to be quick on this, but I think the presentation will help a lot to understand the idea of how our proposed tariff change would work. So right now, to give you an idea, there's something called the energy cost adjustment. And you've had this for 40 years. When you had Kentucky Utilities supplying your power, their energy cost adjustment was made up by a fuel adjustment clause and a true-up. So the fuel adjustment clause is monthly, the true-up is an annual number that's laid out monthly. When the Frankfurt and others formed KYMEA, they decided to simplify it a bit and make it more streamlined. And we'll talk about how the KYMEA ECA works and what the design is, and then we'll go from there. So the first aspect is, let's just look a little bit prior to May of 2019. Frankfurt Plant Board purchased their wholesale power from Kentucky Utilities based on what's called a formula rate. So there's a FERC formula rate. They would come up with, Kentucky Utilities would say, here's our estimated energy charge, estimated demand charge, transmission rate, estimated usage for the year. So at the beginning of a tariff year, they said, we're going to set these rates for the year. Then they would say, well, on a monthly basis, we don't know exactly what our fuel's going to be. So they would adjust their fuel cost with a fuel adjustment clause. That's a monthly adjustment. At the end of the year, they'd also say, well, I'm guaranteed to recover my fixed expenses plus a return on rate base or return on equity component. So they're a for-profit entity, so they said we need a profit, we need to recover all of our expenses, fuel and purchase power, and those types of things. So that true-up then was applied on a monthly basis as well, but it looks in arrears. So one of them's 1 month in arrear, that's the fuel adjustment clause. The true-up adjustment is 12 months in arrears, looking backwards and collecting over the next 12 months. And that's their cycle of how they did what they would call their ECA with the two components. The rate design KYMEA came up with was to say, what are we trying to accomplish by forming our own agency? So we're all about our customers, our members and their customers. So we wanted low competitive rates, but we also wanted rate stability. That was very important to the members. They were kind of tired of this ECA moving up and down, and said, can we try to minimize that? And can we do that by building up a cash reserve fund that we can draw from? So instead of, if we need more money in any particular month, let's just take it from the reserve fund that we build up rather than just try to recover it right away. Again, not-for-profit entity, so as long as we have the reserves there, those are the members' reserves that are sitting there to balance this out. Really well designed, in my opinion, because that gave the rate stabilization fund and working capital needs. The members said we don't have to keep going back to our individual customers. We can keep this at a corporate level and just kind of true it up each year and float that way. They're also very important to have health metrics. What kind of days cash on hand do we have? So we have rating agencies that look at us just like you do. There's a certain expectation on the amount of days cash on hand you'll have, how you're going to cover leverage, coverage of full obligations, debt service coverage. So these are the metrics that a rating agency looks at for us that we need to maintain to have a good financial health. So the board members got together and they set the rates for the agency. So the KYMEA board of directors said, well, first of all, we want cost recovery, bottom-up cost recovery. If we look at our energy cost, our fuel cost, our demand, our transmission, A&G, interest, all those things, we need to recover all those. Otherwise, we can't go and borrow money to pay our operating expenses. The other one is, they said, well, how do we drive how much revenue we need? Well, they said, let's do that based on days cash on hand. So instead of a fuel adjustment clause or a true-up that gives us any kind of return, let's set our rates, and then if we're running out of bounds, either high or low, we'll just true that up at some target days cash on hand. Remember, we're a brand new agency, so there's a glide path of what we're trying to get to. So each year that went along, the board of directors said, as part of their strategic plan, let's try to get 90 days cash on hand by the fiscal year 2024 and glide path toward that. And we've done a terrific job of being on the glide path, keeping rates low. As Mr. Kubine said, there have been a lot of pressures lately that caused that to change a bit. But that's the path we've been on. So when we set up the formation of KYMEA, we have an estimated energy charge, estimated demand charge, and estimated transmission, just like Kentucky Utilities did. But instead of 2 adjustments down below to try to give them a return on equity and those types of things, we're just saying, let's hit our target days cash on hand that's established by the board. And that's what this energy cost adjustment is meant to do. It's worked beautifully so far. The agency, if you look in the yellow bars, when they bought from Kentucky Utilities, you can see the average rate for the agency. In the 3 years the agency's been in existence, you'll see the rates were dropped the first year 8%, second year another 4%, and then flat the third year. Plant Board saved $10 million over the past 3 years due to their thinking ahead of what they wanted to do in controlling their own destiny and forming this agency. So well done. If we look at how the glide path was set up, that was set up as a 5-year look, starting with 53 days in the first year, getting to 90 days in the last year. So that's kind of the minimum target to have. But it was also set up to say, you know what, if we have an exceptionally good year and have too much cash, why don't we just start automatically refunding that? So if the agency's above that orange line at any single month, they would start refunding money back to the members automatically on their bill, just as a mechanism. But on the flip side, we said, well, you know what, if we're dragging below that target can be on and off each month. And instead of being lumpy, where all of a sudden we charge you an ECA collection for a month, and then a month later said, you know, we didn't really need it because the next month kind of corrected itself. It was warm weather, cold weather, that kind of thing. Weather dependency is a big part of it. We said, how about 3 consecutive months if we're below the target, then we start collecting. So that's how it was set up to be fair to the members, that we don't collect unless 3 consecutive months are below, but if you're over, we start giving money back. Okay? If you look at the ECA history then, what happened was in the past with Kentucky Utilities, you'll see that every month there's some type of fuel adjustment and a true-up. And that makes sense because they're saying, I don't know what my fuel is going to be. I guessed at it, and now I calculate it, and I make you true me up, either high or low. You know, generally it had been high over the last since 2010, but there were certain months that dropped below. And on top of that, then you're truing up the what they call the true-up charge, that annualized charge that's made up in the 12 months that followed. Since KYMEA's come into existence, that's been flat. So we've had no ECA adjustment. And I don't think Plant Board hasn't had one for a long time, and that's I think that's a good thing that customers have not seen that on their bill. So the attributes of the ECA is we replace this 2 mechanism of a fuel adjustment clause and a true-up with this singular ECA driven to a day's cash on hand. Days cash on hand is we're not for profit. That's cash the money's keeping. That's cash kept at the agency. It's the members are putting money there to have a stabilization fund and working capital. It's really nice because it addresses PPA uncertainty. If that moves, demand moves at the same time, benefits of purchase powers and sales. We had all these moving parts. We said, let's just incorporate those together, look at our cash needs and say, you know, we're falling below or we're above. And so that's how it was set up. The best thing was the automatic refund mechanism. We said, you know, what do we do if we get too much? We can take that back, automatically collect if we're short, and it gives discipline into this cost of service rate-making process. Okay, so what has happened? Think about the 3 years we've been in existence. I can't think of a crazier time. So if you look at it, we started off with a pandemic response. So I showed you the glide path earlier that looked at our first year. We were supposed to be at 63 days on fiscal year 21. The board decided right then to said, you know what, we're in a pandemic. We're worried about our customers. Let's lower that 63 days down to 40 days so we won't have to collect unless we get down to 40 days. Now, why 40 days? Well, this is kind of the minimum amount of cash we need to do business. Our cash flows, you know, right now we're about $160 million a year. So the cash in and out of our organization is swings plus or minus $13 million, let's say. So we have to have cash to operate. And then they dropped the wholesale rate 4.1%. In the next year, when we were supposed to be at 71 days, they dropped it down to 40 again. We're still in the pandemic. Left wholesale rates the same. We had a substantial increase in Kentucky Utilities transmission service charge. That was 26.4%. The members capped that at 10%. So we took a $1 million draw from that rate stabilization fund. So these are early years already, and we're having to make adjustments from where we wanted to be because of the pandemic. Now we're in a really precarious time. We have inflation, energy price surges. Something I haven't seen is 14-year highs for energy prices, 40-year highs for inflation. We all know. We're supposed to be to target 81 days cash on hand. The board again decided let's leave it at 40 days, and let's limit our wholesale increase this year to 3%. So keep in mind we went down 8%, 4%, flat, now 3% back up, but we're still well below where we started. So that's all good news. But to offset this threefold increase, we think we're going to have to take a draw against the Rate Stabilization Fund. And that's through, the way to take that draw is through the ECA. So we always anticipated a draw would take place. What the board's thinking was at the time when they limited it to 3% was they said, let's limit it at 3% and see if the market turns a bit. We didn't know where the war in Ukraine was going to be at that time. We didn't know where some of these other things were going to be as well. So I think it was a good decision to say, let's see if we can claw our way back out a little bit as a globe and as a nation, right? So the world maybe is going to get better. So far, it's still a pretty tough energy market. But again, that collection was expected to start this year in December of 2022 with the member invoices. So it was going to enact in November, start in December based on what we looked at the budget. And that was taking us below 3 consecutive months at 40 days cash on hand. Okay? So the proposed change, so when I talked to the board members about it, they said, we better not get too far behind here. Why don't we, for this year, why don't we change our 3 consecutive months to just 1 month? So instead of this, because we know we're falling below, and it's going to happen next month, said let's enact it early, because if we get too far behind, then it impacts rates for next year. So we're trying to make sure we keep enough rates stability this year, and then keeps us in a better spot for next year. So the language change that the board proposed was to mitigate this uncertainty of these volatile markets. Highest price again is 14 years, high inflation, severe global impact of Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let's strike out the piece I have struck out, shown in yellow, and change the ECA collection policy to just the single month rather than 3 consecutive months. So before the KYMEA Board of Directors at this Thursday meeting, this is their second reading, so they've seen this already. They're going to take action on whether they want to make this change.
So what's the practical, what we'll be acting on today, as I understand it, if the board wants to act, is not doing anything on our rates. It's basically to authorize Gary at the meeting to vote on this proposed change. And then we'll come back here, I guess at our October meeting, Gary, and then discuss what specifically this means for us and what the impact is. So right now, at the 40-day mark, where is KYMEA's balance right now?
We're at 41 days right now, and,
Okay.
and some change. And by next month, we're going to be below 40. So this will be enacted enacted September, starts October, with the October billings to you.
So from a practical standpoint, with this change, once you go below it, and there's nothing on the horizon that indicates it's going to pop back up anytime soon, then you would basically, what you invoice us each month, you would basically invoice us that additional amount.
That's correct.
And then at that point, we would have to make a determination how we, in fact, spread that among our customers to recover that cost so we can pay you. Is that right?
That's correct. Now, you have a PCA in place, but whether you choose to use that or not, that's on you, of course.
Okay. Gary?
That's correct.
Okay.
The part that Doug didn't really, he probably already mentioned the part of the cost on the overall KYMEA, their cash drop since July 1st is a lot more than the original we expected. The right reason actually is coal and the gas price, right?
Yes,
Or the
right.
market.
Are things, right now, Doug, is the bad situation stabilizing, or is a bad situation getting worse each month as we go into the winter heating season?
So it's stabilizing.
Okay.
And the reason we had a big drop in cash is because we dropped off one contract and started up with another. So we had a cash flow issue. When this contract over here stopped, we were still paying the cash on it. So we were kind of living on some borrowed cash for 3 years that we knew we had to pay back, but we weren't getting the power. So we went from 71 days down to 41 days in a few short months. But then once we get down to there, then we're kind of to this point where, depending where the markets are, we still might lose some ground, but we're not losing like that. It's not that steep a drop.
Okay. Let me open up Jason, Catherine, Steve, John.
I think, John, this is an unfortunate byproduct of the markets. It's a byproduct of the energy markets and what the price of electricity is. I agree with what Doug said. Being in Kemia has kind of sheltered us from that for a long time. I mean, this is the first year we've not actually given a rebate back to our customers. So, we've kept rates the same. I think, and I know this doesn't do anything for anybody who's an FPB customer, but if you were a KU customer, your bill would look substantially different, and that ECA number would have been on there for a long time, and it had been collected.
Well, it's fortunate you asked
gone. And one of our own staff people who
Yes.
happens to live in a KU area can tell us maybe a little bit about what his fuel cost adjustment was
Well,
on
Mr.
his
Dent
bill.
has an outstanding chart to show us, don't you, sir?
I do. We have a comparison of where we are today, retail rates versus KU and Bluegrass Energy. Give me just one moment here. I can pull that up.
It's funny that David had that ready,
We have one out on our website as well. If you go to our electric section, and there is a comparison, but it's not been updated to show these new power cost adjustment numbers. So let me see. If you have anything to say while I'm going through, feel free.
Yes, sir. Steve, you gonna fill in here?
Yeah, I'm gonna fill in, but I'm a KU on this, so I haven't looked at my bill as hard, but anyway, I have a sort of a picky question, and it goes back to the cash on hand. I know 95% of everything that you're spending is pretty much fixed, but there is some leeway in what you spend, and how does that impact the cash on hand? In other words, there are discretionary things that you buy that can impact this cash on hand, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you could speak to that, because
Sure.
there's a
Yeah, very
Yeah.
few. So we have a contract. We have someone who does our 24-hour operation. We have a contract for that. And then, of course, we have a staff of 5 people, and we have the staff level there and their benefits and so forth. We have a rent for the building, and then that's then we're kind of running out of things we have. So our percentage of our overall cost compared to anybody is a fraction because we're so lean. So the amount of, and this is one thing we like to compare against others. So we're very lean, so there's very little discretionary spending. So the big spend, of course, for us is purchase power. So we have purchase power contracts that some of those are tied to a fluctuating price, like a natural gas price. Some are locked into a price. We also are, when we sell excess into the market, we try to hedge out some of that risk, but some of that we just get what the market price is. So those are the huge flows of anything we do.
Well, and I understand that. I guess my question goes to those, and I'll use the word philosophical because I don't know a better word to use right now, where there is a decision, you can go one way or the other on something, policy, whatever, that has a significant cost.
Yeah.
And so how does this allow this automatic cost adjustment, cost adjustment, how does it play into that? I mean, it looks like it gives you could take the higher policy direction because this is going to kick in. And I'm not saying you're doing that. That's just an assurance, something
Yeah.
I need to ask because that's what
I see where you're getting.
That's what a customer would be wanting to know.
That's a fair question. So I have no control over setting that budget level. The board does, just like this board here controls. So my board wouldn't let me say, go spend something on $10 million of expenses so I can boost up the day's cash on hand. The cash does us there's nothing I can do with it other than it's an accumulation of cash to be used for rate stabilization back for our customers and our members, right? So that's totally controlled by a governing body of which I don't have control
But if you have the same control as Gary has on us, then you have a lot of control. No problem.
Yeah, I saw the tongue in cheek on that.
Yeah.
One part of what KVME does is they use a current contract, right, with a long-term contract, both of them, large one. What they do is they nominate, almost purchase all of them, then using that for us first. Whatever left, they pretty much sell to the market. Like last month, I remember the presentations like a $2.5 million. That the turnaround reduced the actual cost. But from KVME perspective, correct me, Doug, I'm just one of the board member. Currently, their cost of an energy piece is in the high 60s. But because the operation, the benefit reduced that, become a 40s. But what a KYMEA, we pay KYMEA, all the member of the KYMEA pay KYMEA is a 28.
Yeah.
So there's a gap between the 28 to actually their cost. That's why the cash drop is probably not going to stop. Every month, the cash is going to continue to drop until either market condition change or KVME board in the future to looking for set a different rate. But KVME board currently don't have a plan to do that until for next year.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well,
Yes.
so this is, we have full transparency of our financials, of course, and every month we look at these things. We project out and we look. So it's always good for the board if they need to take action like they are doing here prior to something else happening. So if the board looks at it and says, we need to take action because our cash is dropping to a point of where it's not sustainable. Now, remember, we have purchase power agreements, and part of those agreements are to make sure we cover our cost. And if you cover your cost, otherwise you get downgraded by the rating agencies. And then all of a sudden now we have a bigger problem. We have to come up with more cash for collateral. So what we're trying to do is balance financial health, rates for the customers, and it's a delicate balance right now.
I think just to follow up what Steve was talking about, and this kind of comes from Steve and I's background, is, when state agencies would come in looking for additional funds, I think we all certainly recognize that as a percentage, your administrative budget is a small percent of your overall. But, we'd always ask state agencies, before you cut these services or change these services, have you looked internally whether there's travel, anything, to basically, even if it's almost symbolic, in 160 million, 15, 20,000 isn't huge, but it's still 20,000 of ratepayer money.
Right.
So I think that's what Steve was saying, is to make sure, and like you said, your board approves it, but I think the board will look to you and say, I've looked internally and I've done everything I can internally to trim.
Yeah.
This is what I got to deal with. I
Absolutely.
think it's fair, Steve, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the process that discretionary cost can drive to minute, maybe percentage cash on hand.
Yeah.
And, if you move to a different building, if it's a more expensive building, it could,
Right.
impact cash.
No, we understand.
And that's a
we're-
discretionary decision on your part, and that's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
No, and we treat every dollar like it's, we're not going to spend it. We're very careful about that. And that has nothing to do with the crisis now or crisis three. This is what we do. It's very important to us to make sure we spend every dollar very wisely.
David, you want to take us through real quick what you've got up here on the screen?
Absolutely. On our, like I mentioned, on our website, we have one. It's not as updated as this is, but you can see here we have FPB's rates, electric rates compared to KU and Bluegrass Energy. Going right to the bottom line, a total bill, this is for a customer, residential customer at 1,200 kilowatt hours a month usage. FPB's bill would be $124.25. With the other two energy companies listed, you can see that's a 24% increase, or approximately $30 more per month a customer would pay if you were with those energy companies. Also, something to think about when you're looking at comparing FPB rates to others is look at the all-in price. You'll notice we are lower on the customer charge. We are compared to Bluegrass a little higher on the kilowatt hour energy rate. But when you consider the fact that other things are added in, such as demand side management and environmental cost recovery, home assistance, fuel adjustments, when you consider all that in, I think it's important to look at the total bill you would receive. We've had customers talk about our energy rate being higher, but if they were to look at, I think, the all-in price, you would rather have our bill.
And then you took a look at what, since we joined KYMEA, what we have saved, and what'd you come up with?
Yes, and I was looking at when took total bill versus total bill, and KYMEA gives us a SEPA resource credit. So looking at all in there is around 19.1 million that we would have paid otherwise had we not switched to KYMEA.
And that, when you say 19, that's 19 million our customers would have
Absolutely.
paid in higher
Yes.
bills
Yes.
that they've saved since we joined KYMEA.
Yes, and FPB's used that money in from the very first year we switched over. In fiscal year 20, 21, and 22, we've given $5.2 million in rebates directly back to customers. The rest has been used to minimize borrowing cost and to invest in our infrastructure at a much lower rate than we would if we had borrowed from a third party. So it's all beneficial to the
And the money that
customer.
we used internal to borrow is being paid back to electric, which in fact goes back to customers with interest.
Yes, sir. So there has been savings used to fund large projects that are very visible. If you've driven by the reservoir, some of the money's gone to help with that because water is financially tight, and we want to minimize water rates as well. So yes, we are showing intercompany payments back and forth, and it is factored into the overall rate that a customer pays for any service. We're very aware that some customers only have one of our services, so we want to make sure your service is priced fairly.
And then we paid off debt early, which in fact saved customers, what, about $8 million in interest over time?
Over the 30 years had we borrowed versus paying off, it was $9 million in interest. So good decisions being made.
Well, I mean, but we can account for the money. The money we've gotten with lower rates from KYMEA have benefited the customers in a number of different ways.
Greatly. It has reduced the trajectory of rate increases coming to our customers. Had we not made this switch, we would be feeling the financial stress a lot more than we have over the last 3 years.
And we've been paying higher interest rates, still paying debt, no rebates and so forth.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
any other questions for Doug or David? Catherine?
So essentially, this is asking that kick this in like a month earlier,
2 months is what it
2
amounts
months
to.
earlier, and you think that will ensure perhaps our credit rating doesn't take a hit?
No, I don't want to make those two connections. It's the reason you want to keep the right amount of cash is because the credit rating agencies would review that. Well, we're not under review now that if we don't do this, we're gonna take our credit hit or anything else. This
Okay.
is more planning down the road is, I guess, my point. It's not a significant amount of collection for us, just extra 2 months early. I understand it's significant for anybody that feels it on their bill, but it's not a make or break type collection, but it keeps us from being in a bad position the next time the board looks at rates a year from now.
Will
they're
be the
trying to-
first time that this would kick in, Doug. If the board instructs Gary to adopt the proposal that you outlined.
Right.
When would be the first time our customers would see that increased cost?
Well, you would see the increased
Well,
cost.
that's us, yes.
Yeah, on your October bill.
Okay. But we wouldn't necessarily have to pass it on to customers at that point. That's another internal discussion we've got to have.
That's for you to decide.
Right.
Right.
And Doug, 40 days is our minimum, right? That's going to be what triggers all this now.
Yes.
And that's where we've kept it, even though we had intentions to go higher than that. We decided to keep it 40, and 40 is the bare minimum in your
Right.
view. Okay.
Okay.
Doug, is that true if the KYM cash above 40 days, this mechanism will be automatic stop collect?
That's correct. Yeah, so if we go above 40 days, then we wouldn't need to collect it the next month.
So one of the things this board will need to talk about in October is when it goes on and off, how we want to adjust that also.
Yep.
So, Jason, you got any, Steve? No? So I guess at this point, we need to instruct Gary on whether to vote in favor of the recommendation to change the 40-day to a 1-month policy. Is that correct? So do we have a motion?
No, change the three consecutive months to 1 month. Yeah,
Yes, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, 1 month.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to direct the general manager at the next KEMIA meeting to vote for the amendment in terms of the energy cost adjustment trigger from 3 consecutive months to 1 month, under 40 days of.
We have a motion.
cash.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Doug, thanks for
All right,
sticking with
thank
us tonight. Sorry, well, you'll still make it home on this same day. Next item, we're gonna really fly now. Next one is action items, financials. Mr. Denton.
Thank you, board members. What you have presented in your board packet is financials as of August of 2022. So this will be 2 months into our fiscal year. You'll notice some positive news through 2 months. One of the things you'll notice on electric, as Mr. Snyder brought up earlier, we did not have a rebate this year. So that's $1.6 million you notice in the revenue line. We're up 0.5% in usage, electric usage, and we're up 30% in water sales through the first 2 months. It's been a dry summer. So overall, the company is doing better financially than planned. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have through these first 2 months. I'll give you a quick update on the audit. The auditors are looking at our pension adjustment. There's quite a bit of work they have to do looking at our unfunded liabilities and preparing the notes for that in our audit. So they are working through that. We're looking to bring it to you in October, possibly November, but things are going well, and we'll have that to you within the next 60 days. So,
And in
with that,
regard to the comment you made regarding that we didn't give the rebate in those funds, we'll get to discuss that revenue next month when we talk about what KYMA talked about in the cost they're seeing, because that cash is there to help absorb part of what we're looking at. Maybe
Yeah, there was that 3% increase, pretty much that $1.6 million by not raising our
Right.
my understanding is by not raising our rates.
Right.
That was the one.
So we brought that rate down or held it stable. Yeah. So. And David's just working nonstop to find all extra kind of cash, right, buddy?
absolutely. I mean, if with full authority, I can do some damage for sure.
Okay, surplus property we can sell.
Yes, that's all right. We haven't spread that yet this year, have we?
Oh yeah, we have.
We have. Number 6. Oh, first is number 5. Public comment? Do we have anybody signed up?
We got a motion. Let me give you a motion.
Oh, on the
Accept
financials. I'm sorry.
report.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to accept financial report.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Financials accepted. When Den said he could do damage, I kind of lost track of it. No one signed up for public comment? Okay, number 6, departmental reports. In the interest of getting to stay here till the next business day, is there any issues or problems or anywhere in any of these department reports that the board needs to be aware of?
Nothing needs to be mentioned.
Okay.
Well, there we go.
You've had to wait 3 hours to tell us that, haven't you?
I've been
David?
practicing for 3 hours.
Thank you, sir. Next one is item number 7, consider award and bid invitation number 1766, liquid ammonium sulfate, tote quantities. Brandon, we talking about chemicals again?
Yes. Hopefully this will be the last time for a couple months. So. The water treatment plant has a current construction project to convert to liquid ammonium sulfate. So during construction, we're using these smaller totes because our tanks are gone. So treatment staff originally received quotes for delivery of tote LAS quantities. However, we're approaching the $30,000 mark on that. So we opened put the bids out August the 10th. Bids included estimated quantities, and they could fall short. Vendors bid with the understanding that bids' purpose is to hold unit price throughout the fiscal year. On August 25th, we opened bids, and Brenntag was the lowest bid at roughly 42 cents. So we budgeted $870 for chemicals this year. So after reviewing each bid, staff recommends awarding the bid to Brenntag, who is the lowest bidder meeting specifications.
So what does that how does that translate against the 870?
Well, buying in the totes are a little bit more expensive. We'll be fine. It's about where we thought it was, so
Okay.
should be good.
Do we have any questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next one is consider revisions to existing fleet replacement policy. Leanne? And I think Ms. Mitchell may have a suggestion for you.
All right.
Okay.
Good evening. Staff recommends adding the following language to the fleet replacement policy. Fleet services and department heads will evaluate the needs of each vehicle or equipment scheduled for replacement to determine if an EV is a suitable replacement. Factors considered will be if there is an EV equivalent available for the vehicle being replaced, cost considerations to include purchase price, fuel, electricity, charger cost, and expected lifetime maintenance, FPB charging facilities and infrastructure or other necessary site changes, vehicle service and parts availability, the maximum daily mileage expected, the weight that the vehicle hauls or pulls, the type of work that the vehicle or equipment performs and specific application, involvement in service restoration. If the vehicle or equipment is vital to providing electric, water, or telecommunication services, determine if replacing the vehicle with an EV would negatively impact service restoration during emergency situations. If a negative impact is determined, that vehicle will be replaced with an internal combustion engine.
Okay. Catherine?
So our chairman sent around a press release which broadened my horizon on the thought about green energy vehicles to include hydrogen-powered vehicles, especially for heavy use trucks, which is part of the problem in considering EV. So instead of us constantly having to change the policy as new green energy comes out, I thought maybe we could either say EV, hydrogen, or other green energy, or just leave it green energy. I don't know if there's a better terminology.
Yeah, I think it was the governor sent out a press release, wasn't it? Was it a plant or it was something that they had made an award that, the Toyota with heavy trucks was going to start doing it. So,
All right.
so that you'd revise that, I guess, say, like Heather said,
We
replacing.
could use a term like alternative fuel
Yeah.
vehicles, something like that. And then just wherever there's EV, we can just talk about alternative fuel.
Sure.
And after alternative fuels, you might want to put a parentheses and just list,
Yeah,
electric,
do a definition at
hydrogen,
the beginning of it.
biofuels,
Yeah.
things like that. But that's great.
Is that okay with everyone? So we've got that changed. So I guess, do we have a motion to adopt this policy as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
One second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Wasn't that worth waiting for? No one was. Thank you. Number 7.3, consider award of bid invitation number 1760, transformer rebuilds and salvage to Sunbelt Solomon Services LLC. Jennifer.
Hi, this is the second part of what we came up with in place of buying the new transformers on the price contract. So last month we had the bid to purchase remanufactured transformers. This one was to rebuild some of the ones we take out of service. We normally just sell those as surplus. So the ones that can be rebuilt, This bid was to have the contract with the vendor to pick up what we have, determine which ones can be fixed, and rebuild those and bring them back to us. So it's kind of the second step in a solution to the high cost and lead time of new transformers.
Do we have any discussion on this? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're here again.
It's me again.
Number 7.4, consider ratification of award of bid invitation number 1765 HDPE conduit to Galloway Group and adopt the purchase in the amount of $62,000.
So this bid is one of the first ones that we used, one of the changes on our procurement policy that was approved last month to allow the general manager to award a bid immediately due to the circumstances listed in the policy. And this bid would have resulted in a higher cost and timely receipt of the material had we not awarded it immediately. So we asked the general manager to award to Galloway Group. The apparent low bidder had the clause in about escalation at the time of shipping, and they also had a 36 to 40 week lead time. So the best bid had no condition on pricing and an 8 to 10 week lead time. This conduit is used for the fiber to the home build, and we were out of stock on this particular one with the pull tape.
And I might add that, in accordance with what the board approved at the last meeting, Gary notified everybody that this was happening.
Yep.
There was obviously, we did not vote or take any action, but the board was all on notice, and that they followed through, and staff had brought it to us to review at this meeting. So, Steve, you did
No, I was just looking back at someone.
Okay.
Well, this is why we put the policy in.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this one we needed it was just
we
a
were
couple
paying
days
higher
after the
price.
last
We were
board
having-
meeting.
You said this is the one we were having we were getting this from the contractors who were putting it in. That was raising the price
Right,
of that.
we had conduit in stock, but not with the pull tape. So we were having them install the conduit and then add the pull tape. So it was almost double labor. For until we get this in, that it's already installed in the conduit.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to consider ratifying the general manager's award of bid invitation number 1765, as Jennifer Howard discussed.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And Jennifer, thank you for
Thank
all your
you.
work on this. Appreciate it. Next one is consider approval of FEWPB reimbursement agreement amendment. Travis, this is on the Tiger grant.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Water, electric, and telecom are all complete with our work at the 2nd Street or Tiger Grant project. So Amendment 3 that's before you this evening for approval reflects the final costs incurred for the electric department and the telecom department for our work on the Tiger Grant project. When the project was complete, we ended up being a little bit over the original agreement amount. We've had conversations with the city. They understand that due to supply chain issues, COVID, everything else we've discussed tonight, naturally we were going to go a little bit over the cost. So based on our conversations with them so far, they seemed agreeable to paying our actual overages. So again, Amendment 3 reflects the actual cost of $650,475.07 in electric costs and $47,058.53 in telecom costs. So again, we would just need this to be ratified to get reimbursed by the city.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any discussions? Now, what's the status of that project? They're getting ready to put the final pave,
I
aren't
think
they?
the final paving is
Yeah, so everything's done?
yeah, we've been done for a few weeks, and I think they're wrapping up too. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe some streets. Is the streetscape or the signage maybe is still
Wayfaring stuff, but I think they're going to have a ceremony
Is that right?
on 24th or something.
But our work's done, and
Our work is done. Water's been done for a while now. Electric and telecom are wrapped up. And
They're
again,
paying all of our costs.
this is all of our costs for electric and telecom. Yes, sir.
Okay, have we gotten it for what? Have they already paid us for water?
Water has been done for a while. I think all the invoicing has been settled on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
David's okay.
And I appreciate the city willing to
Yeah.
be able to pay.
Yeah,
the
they
costs.
were very agreeable and understandable about the overages and how it, kind of came to be, and worked with us very well on that.
To be clear, the city we didn't get reimbursed all 100% of the water costs, but they gave us a certain amount of money. So,
Yep. And as a resident off Second Street, I am very happy. It's a very modern, beautiful streetscape. It was worth the 3 years, but thank you for everything.
And I'll just put a plug in. And, Chuck Knowles, I knew him for years. We worked for state government. Transportation, he's ran his project. He's good. I mean,
Yeah, it's been great.
He's been very
Yeah.
good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
it really is. Anyway, and he's your neighbor, right, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Next one, consideration of purpose standards. Travis and Hans.
And since I'm standing here, you want me to go first? Does that make sense? Okay, I'll give it a shot, and you can help me out if I get too in the weeds. So, PURPA has several federal requirements for utilities that are of a certain size or larger, which would include us. Many of those standards are of the shall consider variety, so they have two new shall consider standards that we need to investigate. The 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act included provisions that we have to consider a demand response and demand flexibility program, and we also have to consider EV charging programs that promote affordable and equitable EV charging options. So again, these are shall consider. There's nothing in the requirement that the board will have to make any changes to the rates other than you have to consider such changes. So what we're asking for this evening is authorization to commence the consideration. We've had in the electric department budget, we've included funds for electric cost of service study. So when we do that cost of service study, we will take that into account and we will consider rates that we can propose to the board for consideration.
And where are we at on that electric rate study?
We should have it out the door and back to the board very soon.
Okay.
We want to get going on. We need to get going on it very soon. David and I have had a couple initial conversations about what all we want to have included. So,
And that'd be an RFP for someone to do it, or how?
I think it's the board's pleasure. I mean, we have existing professional service agreements with other consultants that could do the work. That would obviously be quicker if we want to go that route. If the board would rather see a competitive RFP process, we can do that as well. I think it's kind of, we have both options on the table. If we want to get going on it right away, of course, working with an existing consultant is quicker. But there is, of course, an RFP option that adds, maybe an extra month of delay or something for that procurement process.
Who are the firms that are currently under contract that would be?
Well, we have 1898 that did the rate study on the kind of limited scope rate study for electric last year. I forget the name of the water firm that we worked with.
Gannett Fleming.
I think they do some electric as well. I don't know if David there may be some other financial resources. So there are a couple that are existing that have done rate consulting for us.
If we put it down on the street, then anybody who's currently under contract could still bid, right?
Yeah, of course, that doesn't exclude anybody, yeah.
Is there a reason to think if you use an existing contract, you'd be negotiating an amendment, right, to that contract to do the work?
I think we would negotiate a statement of work with a cost that would be subject to the professional services terms that have already been agreed to, I think is.
And is there any reason to think that if you went out on the street for a bid, that you could get more competitive pricing than if you went with an existing vendor? Do we have any feel for that?
Possibly so. I think the range of costs we would expect are probably fairly tight. We talked the 50 to 75,000 range. I think we're probably limited to somewhere within that range, but yeah, there may be some savings anytime you go.
Which one, John?
Travis, and this might be a Hans question as well, and I'm only asking this question because as vice chair, I get the pleasure of running these public hearings we do.
And you do an excellent job.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm going to look at the procedural requirements. We have to do public notice, we have to do hearing, and it says, there's a line in here that says, we must commence consideration or set hearing date. So we don't have to do the hearing before November 15th, because I think the 15th might actually be our meeting day in November. I don't know. But
Yes.
as long as we say we're commencing consideration, that takes care of it. And then before the November 15th, 2023 date is when we have to make some kind of final determination as to whether the results of our consideration, essentially,
Correct,
correct?
that's my understanding.
Yes,
Hans, does that sound okay?
I think that's right. That's the way I read that. That's
Yeah.
that's about the only presentation I've seen about these new standards.
Right.
I think as long as we kind of advise the board tonight, and then
That or in all caps is very helpful there.
yeah, indeed, and then wrap everything up by November
Next year.
15th of
Okay.
2023. There's a variety of ways utilities have approached it in there. But I
Right.
think a public hearing and some type of a
Study, yeah.
formalized study
Sure.
is sufficient. Some different examples, but
Excellent.
I think that'll get it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't know what the board's pleasure is. I mean, 1898's done work, and I've got no problem with their work. Sometimes, it's good to get a fresh look, have somebody different look. There's, I guess, some economies to somebody who's already familiar with this, but then somebody else coming in brand new. I mean, does the board have pleasure to go and do an RFP and let everybody bid, or just, like Travis said, we can pick up about 30 days to amend a current, but we can put an RFP and get proposals in and then go from there. Anybody have a preference?
If we feel like 1898 can do the work and they understand the topic and they understand us pretty well because they worked with us, I say there's no point not to just go with them.
And of course, the board would approve any contract.
Sure.
It would be, there will be an agenda item for the actual contract.
Catherine?
I mean, given what Jason said, though, we would kind of expect them to be on the lower end. Is there a way to see what they say and then decide to go on and put it out?
I think we could get a feel for that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
If you did that and it was high, what would you do?
Put it out.
And of course, then they know on a bid that we're gonna have to come down.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so, but can you do that? Sure. Okay. Well,
the terms of the contract, Hans, you could probably speak to what the terms of the contract are, but, I mean, if we offer them to do something and they quote a price we don't want, I mean, there are terms already, are there not already terms set out in the professional, isn't there a range of fees already set out in the agreement we have with them?
I'm not sure the exact fees, but the structure is correct that you've got your generalized, these are kind of the boilerplate terms, and then what Travis said, you do your kind of work order that falls underneath those terms. So if you got a price you didn't like, say, well, this came in too high, I think we need to see what else is out there.
Because I think the general
you could do
rules of
that.
procurement is you can make it if it's in the best interest of the agency and reasonable.
Yeah.
And if you get it and you determine the quote that 1898 would say they could do it, and it would be a confidential figure, you wouldn't release that to a competitor. But they could tell you this is what it looks like, and we'd say we think we just need to go to market, then they could still bid on the market. So does that seem reasonable? Is talk to them, see if you can come up with what you feel is a reasonable price based on the product. And if you think, really, we're giving up an extra 30 days, but maybe we can do better or something else, then go on and put the RFP out.
Okay.
Let everybody bid it and then go from there. Okay? I don't think we have to take any kind of motion on that, just given that, Gary, you can take it from here, I think. We're not approving a contract at this point, we're just,
Do we have to make a formal declaration?
Oh, yeah, on the purpose.
Do we have to make a formal declaration that we're going to start
Yes.
considering these things? Is that?
yeah, we need approval on the
Yeah.
the action item itself on purpose,
Yeah.
but not on the
Yeah,
procurement
an
part.
action to commence consideration of the new purpose
Yes.
standards. I think.
On 1898, the last round, they already collect a lot of our data.
Mhm.
They already done some preliminary study. At least a lot of data input they already in the system.
Yes.
Is there going to create an economic for us? I don't know. Hopefully. Sorry.
Get us a good deal, Travis.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion on item 7.6 on the purpose standards?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. We have a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item, 7.7. Is Harvey here? All right. Harvey, consider approving of the NFL Network renewal.
Thank you, sir. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
No, it's
I have 5 items tonight.
yeah.
Staff recommends approval of the NFL Network renewal. This is a NCTC agreement with the term through July 31st of 2024. FPB carries NFL Network on the optional preferred cable tier. Rate increases on NFL Network and Red Zone were anticipated and budgeted, and no immediate rate increase will be needed. Happy to answer any questions on this item.
I assume this is a popular one, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, they still have 7 exclusive live NFL games.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If it's in order, because when my son watched me looking at this Sunday while I was watching the ball games with him, he saw that we were renewing this, and he insisted that I come here. So I'd like to make the motion
on behalf of your son.
Yes, to approve the agreement with NFL Network, which includes the Red Zone channel, which is the greatest channel ever in sports history.
And in honor of Mr. Snyder, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Number 7.8, consider approving Stars and Encore Entertainment Services Amendment. Harvey.
Staff recommends approval of the Stars and Encore Entertainment Services Amendment. This is an NCTC agreement with a term of January 1st, 2021 through December 31st of 2025. Our most recent Stars agreement was executed way back in 2014. There's actually going to be a reduction in rates on this, and I think when we come to the board in January, probably looking at rate adjustments, we would look at a reduction in the Stars rate at that time. So, but we would ask for you guys to approve this amendment, and happy to answer any questions on this item.
Any questions for Harvey? If not, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Harvey, number 7.9, consider approving Game Show Network renewal. Does this include Family Feud?
I think they do have.
Oh, that's good.
On
Yeah.
that, yeah.
I like Steve Harvey.
Staff recommends approval of the Game Show Network renewal. This is an NCTC agreement with the term through December 31st of 2025. Game Show Network is on preferred cable, channel 114. This is an early renewal, but we'll actually be able to reduce our rate for this network by 6.5% by opting in early. So,
is this a trend? I mean, are they? For a while everything was going. Are we starting to see some of this?
I'm hopeful
Contracts go down.
Seems to. I mean, this is a sort of a reduction reset, but then it'll start ticking back up, in the future. The Game Show Network actually did this, I think, last time with the early renewals. I think trying to get folks to lock in early, and that way they know what they have in the future. But I think on the whole, the increases have flattened a little bit across the board. So I'm hopeful that that is a consistent trend, especially as we get into retrans next year. So.
Hey, do we have any other questions for Harvey on this?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Harvey, the penetration on this, because it's on a separate tier and it's not on.
So Game Show Network's on preferred cable.
Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
We're gonna pay the higher rate for the less than 65%.
Just on those, just on the folks that, yes, right, yeah, on the tier
right
below
okay.
65%. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Any other questions for Harvey?
Would they let us just spin a wheel that we get a lower rate?
We'll propose that maybe next time. That'd be good. I'm sure they.
Well, that wheel kind of ticks down to the last. Yeah.
John gets to spin the wheel because he's the board member, and then we see where.
Like Shoe Carnival. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Harvey, number 7.10, consider approving Weather Show Creator 24/7 agreement.
So, if you'll recall, back in March, the board executed a renewal for continued carriage of the Weather Channel, which is Channel 49, and Weather Scan Local on Channel 19. When at that time we had asked Weather Channel to commit to carriage of Weather Scan through the term of that agreement, they were unwilling to do that. So that made us a little bit concerned. We started down this road with AccuWeather. Essentially, this is going to be a replacement for Weather Scan Local on Channel 19. We received notice from the Weather Channel that is going to be going away. This is not my favorite thing to have to deal with because we know lots of folks watch WeatherScan, just like a lot of folks watching MeTV, but we were able to Dave Brown and those guys made that work. But we think this will actually be maybe an upgrade for customers as far as the experience of the content we'll have on Channel 19. So
You still have radar and
current temperature, time, and,
Yeah.
and all those things, and hopefully some additional stuff too. So we've been working with the advisory committee on this item for the last few months because we knew that this was something coming down the road. So they took action to recommend approval of this agreement as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We're hoping with approval tonight, we'll have equipment in place by early October, and that'll give us a month to get it all ready to go by the end date of WeatherScan, which is November 1st.
Because a customer stopped me the other day and was real pleased about MeTV being back on.
It was, those guys worked really hard. They were on the, LEX took it down, and we were back up, I think, about 2 hours later.
Don't lie, John, that customer was you.
It was.
There's a lot of good stuff on MeTV.
So Harvey, if you all are ready to go with this before November 1st, you're let's go ahead and put it out there.
I mean, I think that would be, I mean, I don't want to commit, but I think that,
if it's ready,
if we're comfortable, I think.
But you don't think there'll be a lag between the first step?
So I wouldn't hope there would not be any gap. I think it would be a hot cut over.
Okay.
We'll notify folks once we have this agreement in place. We'll notify customers that WeatherScan's going away. And like I said, I hope it's an upgrade for folks. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions to Harvey? If not, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. 7.11, budget amendment to telecom marketing budget. This is one we've talked about previously, and I think you're bringing back this specific amendment now, Harvey?
Yes, sir. We had discussed back at the June 22 meeting, when you guys approved your full budget, asking staff to investigate some additional marketing opportunities for Next Band. Staff explored numerous opportunities, and we've come up with 3 new initiatives that we think will help with awareness, outreach, and growth of the Next Band product. So we're requesting a budget amount in the amount of $60,000 for the current fiscal year for those items.
Will this involve any additional staff or just existing staff, and these would be spent on the activities themselves?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions to Harvey? Okay, if not, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, John?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I'm sorry if I'm out of order. Given that we only have one major topic left, is there any way to release some of the staff who don't have to stay?
Yes.
Can we make it?
We do have a closing section.
Right. But does the staff need to,
Department staff.
department staff?
For the discussion item, one is for the, probably Hans can tell us who need to stay in that part, but the David, you need to tell me other items who need to stay.
Okay.
Yeah, those that need to stay are aware and will stay. The
Okay.
cable telecom
Yes.
Okay.
mostly.
Okay. So,
Anybody else, David, from your standpoint, anybody else need to stay on the closed session items? Okay. So, does that mean everybody's staying?
No, it's moving.
I tried.
Nice try.
Okay.
Next item is item number 8, informational item. And this is one, first, I think, a lot of thanks go to Jason, you and Catherine, and everything you all have done on this. And I mean, you all have been working with staff and really done just a huge amount of work. And this one, I know there's been a lot of interest in the community, and I think we're at the point of doing what I think everybody's been wanting us to do. And maybe Catherine or Jason, before Travis starts, do you all want to say anything, or?
I'll read this, and maybe Jason, you can kind of
Okay.
fill in some of the fine points. But with the revised federal tax benefits and the Inflation Reduction Act, FPB will have the opportunity to receive federal reimbursement for solar project development beginning in 2023. The tax tax changes will also greatly increase the savings for all renewable project development versus previous years. Due to the expected demand for solar equipment and construction providers, staff recommends issuing an RFP for the design and Phase 1 construction of the community solar farm. Prior to release of the proposal request, staff is seeking board confirmation of the facility size, location, and project timing. With an anticipated multi-week procurement period, a proposed vendor and contract is expected to be available for the board's review and consideration at the regular November meeting. So I don't know if, Jason, you want to kind of speak to how this IRA has sped things up?
Yeah, and I'd like to just thank Catherine for getting the ball rolling. We're so far down the road already with this, with her leadership and vision. We've been moving on this for a long time and been talking, and obviously the IRA has greatly impacted a lot of things solar. On the commercial, industrial side, it's raised the tax credit back up to 30%. But unlike we've ever seen before, it has now allowed nonprofits to now have that same 30 to potentially 50% reimbursement, because obviously they can't do tax credits, but a reimbursement now that truly changes the dynamics and the return on investment related to solar for a nonprofit like us. And my biggest concern on pushing this to the board and asking for us to move this forward, to ask staff to move this forward, is that I think with the addition of tripling or quadrupling now the market for solar, with the nonprofit schools and cities and hospitals all now being able to realize that really nice payback, we're going to see a glut in the marketplace that we've never seen before, which means if we don't move now on securing a vendor and moving this project forward with panels and locking down everything, that we may be in a 2 or 3 year glut, not being able to move this forward because of a bottleneck. So I think we've done a lot of research. The staff has been great in looking at everything, understanding the parameters, understanding the opportunities, and we just need to get the process moving forward as quickly as possible.
And my understanding is the RFP would give us, it'd be on the site we discussed back here, and it would be both either for 150 or 300, with the option of being able to pick once we see the pricing and once it comes in. And then Kathy Lindsay and her staff working with Travis we can't give a specific price because we're not going to know that price until we see the bids, but we could at least talk in a range of what it might be and begin starting the education and marketing efforts. Mm-hmm. And as long as we don't become operational till after the first year, we don't jeopardize any of the tax or the federal reimbursement, right?
That is our understanding. The Treasury Department, everyone is still trying to figure out everything in that bill. The other thing I'd like to talk to the other board members about, just as a overall philosophical approach, is Kathy has been great about giving us assessment of what she's hearing from the community. She definitely would like to do a more kind of quantitative approach. It really comes, and I say this all the time, a chicken and the egg, which one comes first? And with this one, assessing demand without actually having the pricing and knowing exactly what it is, it's hard to give them a sense. But also that slowing down the process suddenly means we may have a ton of demand and we can't do it because of the market conditions. So we have worked with Travis and Gary to look at this facility and its energy needs, and we determined that even building a 300K system would be about 45% of the demand of this building. So as a mission set out by the city and trying to have all the community and all the community institutions moved on a green and renewable path, even if we were to build it and they didn't come, sorry, bad baseball movie analogy, but if they didn't come or it was less than we thought, we could still absorb that power into this building, no problem, and it would move the plant board toward the larger community goals.
And we'd be one of the first to make that conversion.
Exactly. So it would show that we are committed to the larger city commission's goals of the community institutions going green. So if the community, we had less demand than we expect, we could always absorb that power and be able to move toward our own goals.
Jason, Catherine, I do have one question. In the documentation you have here, because of IRA, the facility cannot be commissioned or placed, I understand placed into service.
Yeah.
Is us signing a contract or approving an RFP, is that, what is commissioned in those terms? Do you have any idea? Or do they?
It really is a range. Like on the backside with the, what I can give you is on the backside. Like the ITC was stepping down, and so people were trying to lock it in at a higher rate. And so what was commissioned on the back's the other side. And what they were doing is putting down a significant deposit with the vendor and also, you know, maybe 5 or 10%, but also showing their intention to the IRS they were going to move forward. And that would give a 2-year grandfather. And so I would have to imagine on a flip end, and Travis, if you have any more, is, I mean, definitely completion of the project before 2023 would, but there's no way we could do that. But I don't even, if we put a pylon into the ground.
Design contract it's probably not commissioning something.
I would say the extreme might be finishing it, but by the beginning of 2023, which would never happen. But even maybe even putting a pylon in the ground and putting panels would not even trigger that. But Travis, do you have any more updates on that?
From our world in the typical utility space, commission means you've tested everything out and you're kind of right up to that point where you say go. That's how.
Yeah, where you're actually claiming the project.
That's kind of a term of art then. So okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that us issuing the approving the contract before January 1st would not cause any issues. So.
Well, and then once again, I mean, this RFP process will take multiple weeks.
Right.
And I am daily getting updates on the ITC and the interpretation of it. So what we know now versus what we'll know in 4 weeks, we'll know.
So
a lot
realistically, best possible speed to get the RFP on the streets, what, first week in October, second week in October?
Yes, I'd say that's fair.
So 30 days to respond?
Yeah, maybe 3 weeks, 30 days to respond.
So that puts you in November 15th. By the time you evaluate, it wouldn't come before the board till December. It could be awarded with an effective date of 1/1/23.
Yeah. And do you mind if we maybe do set it on the lower end of the response? This is not a heavy lift for a solar vendor. It's a very small project. I would say 20 days maybe would be
okay.
20.
Yeah.
I would say on the lower end for sure.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
be okay.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a pretty small system in all regards.
Even if we do it in November, we can have them start. We can put the effective date starting on January 1st.
Yes.
That way, it'll clear us out of any question of any of that.
I think well, because we have a chicken and the egg. Sorry. You're going to be tired of me hearing me say this metaphor. But we do want to do whatever it takes to lock down the vendor once we've chosen them.
Mm-hmm.
They require a 5% deposit or something like that to make sure they'll be available in January and February.
Right.
We may want to just say, as long as that doesn't interfere, we may lose the tax credit on that 5%, but we may need that to make sure we have them locked down.
You may do that. You may actually save that 5% though on pricing by locking it early as opposed to.
I mean, I may be wrong in 6 months, but I'm expecting 6 months for
I understand.
vendors to be very backed up.
But this basically gets us out there and gets us in the game.
That's what I'm hoping.
So,
Yeah.
So I don't think we have to take a formal action, but what we're doing is basically agreeing that we want you to proceed and get it done.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So, Catherine, you and
Thank you, guys.
Jason, both thank you all. Travis, thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Next one, we had talked before, and I'd had a long, detailed discussion with Darren at the Shell gas station. And he had talked, and I just thought it would be helpful just for him to show you. He talks a lot about the number of orders he's getting. So we were talking, and in fact, we're generating internally a lot of his own business. Just so everybody's aware of it. So Darren, you want to just give us a real quick, and you did a map and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna give you you received an email.
Mhm.
Received the email.
Yeah.
With a list, but that's been updated. This is today, actually, so it's still electronic. Bill.
Thank you.
Give it to you.
Thank you.
On paper. Obviously, I'm not gonna read all these to you. You can look at the list, but I think the only FPB project on there is just our fiber project that's ongoing, no big deal. But AT&T's doing one, Verizon's doing one, a backbone project. Lots of gas projects, lots of large construction projects coming. Some of this stuff on this list is planned but not started yet, maybe in the spring. Some of it's part of an overall larger city plan. But still, everything on this list impacts us and our locators and the workload. So,
And what you were telling me was, for example, us on our fiber, if we were going into a subdivision, say we were going into Silver Lake.
Yeah.
Going into Silver Lake actually might involve several hundred locates, right?
Yeah, the issue we're running into is locates used to be a majority of, we call them shrub and fence locates, just homeowner projects we would do a 15-minute locate for. But now, these large projects, and according to, it's KRS 367, it's the dig law. A large project is defined as 2,000 feet or multiple tickets on one project. So that's the definition in the 811 law of a large project. So all these meet that criteria. But the problem we have, you said it, if we go into a subdivision, we'll get a series of not just one locate. We might get a locate for 2,000 feet, but we may get 5 more right behind it for another 2,000 or another 2,000. So you're talking about days, not minutes. Right now, we actually have one locator assigned full-time to just large projects, staying ahead of some of these large projects, fiber projects. The other one usually does the small individual tickets, and then the third kind of bounces back and forth. Here recently, for the last few weeks, we've had 2 dedicated all day long to just projects, trying to stay ahead of the curve, and then then the other person gets behind with the individual tickets. I think I looked just earlier, I think today we left 24 locates on the plate for tomorrow, which more will come in tonight. It's just a never-ending process. So there's a concern there too with just kind of running our people to death and burning them out.
And you've got, by law, you've got a timeline you have to meet, right?
Yeah, we do. It's in the statute how quick we have to turn a locate around. A typical locate has to be flipped in 48 hours of receiving it. A large project usually gives you an extra day. But still, and a lot of these are second notice locates. What will happen is a construction company or a subcontractor of a company will start a large project, and they'll submit a bunch of tickets knowing they're not going to get this far in the 20 days that their locate allows. So we'll go do them, but then in 20 days we go do them again. It's a lot of that, and that's just part of the project. Part of construction. It rains, something happens, they run out of materials. It's really no fault of anyone. It's just the way it is.
And one of the other things you had told me about was that if Columbia Gas goes out to do a locate, they locate their gas line. But if you go out, you got to look at water, electric, and cable. You got to do 3.
You're correct. There's no other locate company out there. We were brainstorming trying to find one. So Columbia Gas subcontracts to a private company, as KU does, AT&T does. They all use private locators. But that contract, they locate their one utility, the electric or the gas line. And here, actually now we're locating technically 4 utilities: water, electric, cable, and now, fiber moving into the future. So it's, 4 times the amount of time on scene, maybe, maybe quicker than that. We have good maps, and our locators know our area and our utilities, but still, the meaning's the same. They're doing 3 or 4 locates on every stop, not just here's the gas line or here's the phone line. And a large percentage of our stuff is overhead, thank goodness, but if it's 30 or 40% overhead, if we're adding fiber to just the telecom part, that's doubling. It's another locate there. So again, it's no one's fault or anything like that. It's just the way it is. It's just more construction, more business. We've got 2 large subdivisions being built, 2 large housing developments. Got breaking ground on one now. I think it's, I don't remember, 90 some units. So it's a pretty large complex. The other one's over 300 out in the paddocks. As that develops. So again, just that one area is going to consume a whole lot of time.
Yeah. So I just thought it was, Darren gives us an update. Usually we see the statistic, but when he started talking about, like I said, we were pumping regular gas. So
yeah.
Any questions of Darren? Or?
Yeah. There's some frustration. It's like we can't, we're sinking.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's, you have the list. If you have questions, please let me know. Okay. But it's just, it keeps expanding.
Yeah. Well, appreciate your efforts, and thanks for putting all that together.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. General Manager?
I really don't have, but Mr. Chairman, we do have, hopefully you can consider old and new business.
Yes.
We got some good news the other day. second round of ARPA funds. The city and the county worked out a deal. Basically, we have about $780,000 that the city has consented to give to the plant board for a water project. It's the same amount as going to the sewer department for a sewer project. We looked into this and we're getting some misinformation on whether we need a consent letter or not, so we're erring on the side of caution and asking the board to approve this consent letter. We don't at this time have to say which project it goes for, but the reservoir project has already been approved by the KA. It's already been through all the clearinghouse and the ship owners, which are some of the requirements.
So, and that's our only project that meets all that criteria, is that right?
Yes, that I'm aware of, yes.
So in signing this letter, does it come back to the board later to actually commit to a project, or how does that work?
There's much more paperwork to follow.
Okay, is that right? Okay. So this is just the board taking action to submit the consent letter and say we want the money?
Yes.
Quick, sign it.
Does anybody not want the money? So we'll take it. Do we have a motion to execute the letter?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Sign that letter. Motion approved. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the good news.
Thank you. Great news.
The next one is
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
since we enjoyed the first closed session so much, I would like to make a motion to request permission to call closed session pursuant to both KRS 618101C to discuss pending or proposed litigation regarding both cost recovery, OSHA contract matters, as well as under KRS 618101G to discuss a specific proposal that, if openly discussed, would jeopardize the siting, retention, expansion, or upgrading of a business. And as well as an easement matter, that's right.
Thank you, sir.
So we have a motion as amended. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? We're going into closed session, say in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to come out of closed session.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're back into open session. Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to direct staff to proceed in the matters discussed in the closed session in the manner directed by the board.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.
We almost made it to midnight.